Respect quietly shapes your day. It affects how you feel walking into a meeting, whether a difficult conversation ends in progress or resentment, and how quickly an online thread turns from discussion into pile-on. You notice it most when it's missing. Cheap shots get rewarded, careful arguments are ignored, and contempt starts to feel normal. So what if respect wasn't a mystery but something you could build? Small, repeatable choices can strengthen it in workplaces and schools, and leaders and communities can reinforce it by drawing a line against casual disrespect. Today, you'll learn how daily habits turn respect from a feeling into behavior. You'll see how teams and schools wire it in through expectations, hiring, and on-the-spot correction. And we'll also look at how families model it, so children recognize dignity, and how civics plus civility can cool public life without dulling conviction. Let's start with the world we live in now, looking at what grabs our attention and motivates us, and then explore how that shapes the way respect shows up. Respect often feels rare in a culture that monetizes outrage. Fast communication, reality show drama, and social feeds that celebrate takedowns have helped make "I'll respect you if you respect me first" the default. When authority figures behave badly and politicians gain fame by being combative, deference starts to look naive and aggression looks smart. No wonder calls to be respectful often sound hollow. Kindness, on the other hand, offers a more effective entry point. Educators report a decline in formal respect, paired with a growing hunger for simple decency. Kindness remains easy to recognize and copy, holding a door, sharing credit, checking in on someone who's struggling. When schools, workplaces, and faith communities make those small gestures visible, practice them on purpose, and teach skills like listening and encouragement, they create pockets of a different norm. In those spaces, respect stops being an order from above and starts to grow naturally out of how people treat each other every day. This work sits inside a wider crisis of disconnection. Many people feel isolated despite constant digital connectivity. Public health leaders warn that loneliness harms both bodies and communities, undermining empathy and making it easier to dismiss or dehumanize others. We need to rebuild connection through physical presence and shared activities. Deliberately rebuilding connection by showing up in person, serving others, and joining shared activities is a precondition for lasting respect. Language matters here too. Habitual sneers and labels train us to see opponents as caricatures. Explaining reasons instead of attacking motives, staying calm when provoked, and listening before responding all lower the temperature and give everyone permission to think instead of just react. Moral and public figures who refuse to turn every disagreement into a brawl model what that looks like. Underneath all this lies a deeper conviction. Human worth exists independently of usefulness. Treating others as ends in themselves, not tools or targets, reshapes how we disagree, set boundaries, and use our platforms. While modern incentives reward outrage, small acts of kindness flip the script, and they make respect contagious. It turns out there's a clear inner base that keeps those outward behaviors consistent: self-respect. Let's look at that in the next section. If kindness and respect toward others are going to be real, they need a solid base inside. That base is self-respect, a settled sense that your life has worth and your dignity is not up for negotiation. It's different from ego or surface confidence. With too little, you bend yourself into shapes that please others, and with too much, you stop listening. A helpful starting point is the belief that every person has basic worth simply by being human, including you. That inner stance is what lets you act decently even when approval is uncertain or absent. Michael J. Dowling, CEO of Northwell Health, shows how self-respect can grow out of hard conditions. Raised in rural Ireland in a family with serious financial and health challenges, he held to his mother's insistence that poverty would not define their future. He approached education, work, and opportunity with that in mind. Every difficult challenge became a building block for his sense of worth. This applied to everything from studying abroad to guiding a huge organization through crises. The pattern is simple, if not easy. Decide what matters, do something small that reflects it, then take on a bigger stretch instead of sitting back and wondering what if years later. Self-respect also depends on alignment. A short list of values, each linked to a real behavior, keeps you honest when pressure and incentives pull you in easier directions. Using your time and energy on what steadies you, reflection, movement, learning, faith, real connection, reinforces the message that your life is worth caring for. You also need to watch out for the things that slowly drain your self-worth. These can be comparison on social media, harsh treatment that you silently absorb, an inner critic that only tallies mistakes. Deliberately notice progress, not just flaws, and practice calm assertiveness when you're disrespected. Over time, this inner stance shapes your reputation. How others learn to expect you will show up. In the next section, we'll turn that internal grounding into 5 concrete habits that make respect visible every day. Respect becomes believable when the inner work of self-respect shows up in small, repeatable habits. Let's now look at 5 qualities that make this work visible. The first quality is listening with total attention. That means putting the phone away, noticing posture, pace, and tone, and being aware of what your own body language is saying. Rather than planning your comeback, ask open questions that help the other person think out loud. Good listeners avoid dominating the airspace. Instead, they turn conversations into safe places where people can bring up what really matters. Second, remember that everyone carries their own experiences and beliefs. In a culture that often mocks difference, validating another view as a legitimate starting point acts as a radical form of respect. This doesn't mean you're not allowed to disagree, of course. But begin by hearing the full story, especially when it comes from someone you're inclined to see as an opponent. That stance lowers the heat and keeps you out of the trap of assuming you are right. And they are ridiculous. Third, make respect visible through courtesy. Small gestures, a sincere thank you, a considerate offer, choosing not to join gossip, signal that people are seen and safe around you. Those moments feel minor, yet they reset the tone of a room, a family, or a team. Fourth, practice compassion to build belonging. That might involve reminding people they are not defined by their mistakes. You could follow up by inviting their questions and connecting their goals to your hopes for them. Used consistently, that kind of language tells people they matter, especially when they're struggling. Finally, honor human dignity in concrete ways. Status and titles change, but a person's worth does not. Learn and use names, greet people personally, and treat everyone as someone whose story is worth hearing. When a leader does that and firmly defends staff who are treated badly, it sets a standard others quickly notice. When these 5 qualities line up, respect stops being an idea and becomes a habit others can feel and copy. Next, we'll bring these habits into everyday work and see how they build trust, performance, and long-term commitment. Respect at work is all about what happens in small moments. The same habits we just discussed, listening, perspective, courtesy, compassion, and honoring dignity, show up clearly on the job when leaders make them visible. In the office, attention translates to respecting time and priorities. Never assume your agenda automatically outranks everyone else's. Apologize when you overrun a meeting or disrupt someone's day. As the old saying goes, use your ears and mouth in proportion to their number. This focus on listening lays the foundation for trust. It demonstrates that connection precedes authority. In practice, that means steady tone, open questions, and an honest acknowledgement of worries when change or uncertainty hits, rather than jumping in to dominate the story. Once people feel heard, clear decisions, follow through, and high standards land as leadership rather than control. Hiring and onboarding either reinforce this climate or erode it. Attitude, curiosity, and value alignment matter more than degrees or pedigree. Some leaders meet every new cohort personally to talk about decency, honest disagreement, and how colleagues are expected to treat one another. Over time, that clarity shows up in low turnover and in staff who say, quite simply, I stay because I feel respected. Standards also need enforcement. Because disrespect spreads when ignored, leaders must intervene immediately when a colleague is cut off or dismissed. You can restore the floor in the moment, then handle the coaching privately. The same vigilance applies to patterns, such as who consistently gets credit and whose concerns get brushed aside. Even a brilliant performer becomes a liability if they demoralize the team. Day to day, respect is carried by small signals, timely replies, specific appreciation, genuine invitations to contribute, and a visible refusal to gossip or belittle. When leaders do these things consistently, trust becomes the default. In the next section, we'll take these same principles into family and personal relationships, where everyday respect is learned first. Respect at home begins with observation. Partners, children, and even guests notice how you greet the delivery driver, whether you knock before entering a room, and how you speak about people who aren't there to defend themselves. A simple rule helps. Everyone's worth is equal, whatever their age or role. This might mean explaining decisions instead of saying, "because I said so," or cutting off a just joking put-down, even when it gets a laugh. When decency shows up in these small, predictable ways, the whole household starts copying it. Words carry a lot of that weight. Since disagreements are inevitable, tone and focus determine the outcome. An argument about chores sounds different when you say, "I felt overwhelmed when the kitchen was left like that," instead of labeling someone lazy. If tempers spike, call a pause and agree to come back to the issue once you both feel calmer. The pause is very different from the cold shoulder. One is a reset, the other is punishment. For especially sensitive topics, it helps to state your goal up front, perhaps saying you want to discuss money and end the talk on the same side. You can also train respect by highlighting the positive. A short daily check-in where everyone shares one or two things they're grateful for trains the brain to notice what went right in the day, not only what went wrong. You can do the same individually by sending a quick message that says, "I appreciated how you handled that call," or telling a child, "I saw how patient you were with your sister." When you argue without contempt, choose words carefully, show gratitude, and treat every person's dignity as non-negotiable, home becomes a training ground for respectful life in wider circles. That sets the foundation for the final section, where we'll take these same habits into civic life, where disagreement is constant and the stakes often feel higher. When you zoom out from one conversation, one workplace, or one family, the same pattern appears. Self-respect gives you a backbone. Everyday habits turn that into visible respect for others, and close relationships become the training ground. From there, the circle widens. How we listen, disagree, and protect dignity in small settings is exactly what scales into civic life. Some leaders already model this under extreme pressure. Rabbi Arthur Schneier, a Holocaust survivor who founded the Appeal of Conscience Foundation, spent decades arguing for basic rights with world leaders. During Argentina's dirty war, he confronted the military junta about mothers whose children had been thrown from helicopters into the sea. He refused to match the lies he heard with anger. Instead, he held his composure, repeated the truth, and pressed for lives to be protected. The pattern is worth copying. Confront injustice, stay grounded, and treat human life as the line that cannot be crossed. From there, the work comes closer to home. We have to talk openly about values and how we want the world to work, not just what we're against. Ask yourself and others, what would an ideal community look like? The answers reveal what matters and guide where you stand up. You don't need a title to defend someone who's being belittled or to support efforts that widen opportunity. At the end of the day, civility lives or dies in how we communicate. After all, while social media and quick messages move information, they strip out tone and context. So whenever stakes are high, shift from transmission to real conversation. Slow down, bring difficult topics into voice or face-to-face, and add context before critique. If insulted, give yourself time before answering so you respond from conviction, not adrenaline. In public debates, acknowledge what the other side is trying to fix, then offer a better path. This shows you are serious rather than surrendering. This personal discipline lays the groundwork for structural change. Institutions shift only when our expectations of them shift. That relies on parents, teachers, employers, and faith communities treating civics as a lived practice. This involves rethinking how we share power and listen across lines. Programs that invite people to notice and practice kindness prove this point. They demonstrate that belief shapes behavior, and that kindness spreads when we reinforce it. None of this is abstract. Every time you choose curiosity over contempt, defend someone's dignity, or turn a room toward decency, you nudge the wider culture. Do it often enough, and those nudges add up. The power to reset the tone belongs to you.